it's Tom from Debleeble, and guess what? I'm starting up a new tutorial series on CSS. Check out Debleeble for more information on it. But this is the first one. This is the intro to all of it. This is all the basic things you need to know about CSS and some cool tricks to use it. The first thing I want to say is that you need to get a next-gen third-party browser. Now when I say third-party, I mean not the one that comes with your computer. If you have Internet Explorer, even if you've updated, it's just outdated and it doesn't understand a lot of the mainstream CSS things and even other JavaScript stuff, and it makes it really hard for web developers. And if you're a web developer, it makes it even harder for you to make everything compatible for Internet Explorer. And if you're thinking to do that, it's really difficult, and it's going to make it really hard for your website to look good. I do not suggest just ignoring people that use Internet Explorer. That's not a good idea. But for now, I'm going to be showing you a lot of the tricks that mainly only work in Google Chrome and Firefox. So if you have any browsers like Safari or, well, I guess Safari or Internet Explorer, or outdated browsers like Opera and Netscape, most of the commands and CSS and stuff aren't going to work. But if you're using Google Chrome or Firefox, they're going to work fine, and it's okay. Most of the people, almost 50% of the desktop browsers, now use Google Chrome. And all the Nexus phones that are coming out, the Android phones, I guess, they're all using Google Chrome. They're going to be understanding your CSS, and, you know, Internet Explorer is catching up a little bit. So let's get into it. Well, first, what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to create an HTML file. If you're using PHP, you can do that, but for the most part, because we're going to be editing on our desktop, you're going to be wanting to use HTML. So just create a new text document, and we'll rename it to I'll just call it index. It's a normal thing. It's the first thing run on a server. And we'll put .html. Oh, and one thing to note, if you don't have the extensions at the end, you need to go, well, in Windows 7, you need to go to Organization, Folder and Search Options, View, and then it will say hide extensions for known file types. You need to uncheck that. It's very important, especially for, well, developers, because you need to be able to see the extension you're running. If you can't find that, or you don't want to activate that, you could simply open up Notepad or Notepad++ like I'm going to do today, and you could go save as, and then save it as an HTML file. Well, I guess the first thing we need to do is we need to open it up. Let's open it up in Notepad++. It's one of my favorite text editors. I also like Dreamweaver, but it costs money, and because of that, I'm probably never going to use it that much. The first thing we need to do, that I like to do, is I like to set up some main, spatial things. Like I want a header. I think it's just a head tag. 1 second, I just want to close it. I want a body tag. And if I was programming HTML5, I want a footer tag. Though I don't think I would use it that much. So the first thing I always like to do is I like to put a title on it. This does not display actually on the page. It displays up top. And actually, I think Oprah doesn't even use that. So I don't know. Oprah's messed up. But I'm just going to put the title in, and I'm just going to call it Debleeble. Debleeble CSS test. And it's always a good idea to add a title. So, the first thing I'm going to go over is there's a couple things in CSS. To open up internal CSS, internal means it's actually in the page. External, you would have a file linking to it, which has it. Note the cascading style sheet. But for the most part, I usually use internal CSS just because it's easier. But depending on how many times repetitive you're going to use the same thing over on multiple pages, it could be just a lot easier to use an actual CSS file, but for now we can just use this. Now there's a couple ways to dictate CSS. The first way is you can set a general rule. For example, you could say for every body tag, or every H1 tag, or for every div tag, which is pretty simple. For example, let's say every body tag, which we have one. Here we go, 1 second. There we go. You have to use the curly brackets. For every body tag, we want to set the background to. So I just want to say this one thing. When you're using CSS, you don't use an equal symbol and then 2 quotes to note what is. You just put a semicolon at the end and a colon basically for the equal symbol. So we're just going to say hash mark Let's set it to black. And then we'll just save this. And then note I have Notepad++ on one side, and then I'm going to open it up. And I like using Firefox. You may like Google Chrome, whatever. See how it's black now? And if I would change this, it would become save. It's now white. I'll just leave it at white for now. So the next thing I want to go over is I'm going to create some H1 tags here. H1, 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 and I'm just going to close these. I'm just going to close test 1. Test 1. Another way to dictate things is, like we said, we can do it purely by just putting H1. But another way is you can put you can use by ID. And for that, you use a hash mark and then the ID. So we could say this one is test. Well, actually test 1. Oh, why do I have 2 1s? That makes no sense. There we go. We can have test 1. And again, we'll have the open curly brackets and a closed curly brackets. And then we could say some things about it. For 1, we could say text size, colon, semicolon, and we could say it is, I'm using an H1 tag that I don't think I can really change the font size. It's kind of confusing to me. Let's just change the color, something that makes more sense. So to change the color, we're just going to type out color, colon. Now, I like using hexadecimal. For this, I'm going to just show you. If you really want, you could just type out red. So to preview this, we'll just click save, and then preview. Oh, I also forgot to tell you. Oh, that didn't work. 1 second. That should have worked. What did I... Oh! I am being such an idiot. See how we didn't use H1 tag? For example, I'm just going to throw this now. If we went H1, saved, refreshed, they're now both red. But if we're trying to use a tag. Remember, we had test 1. So now if I go ID equals colon test 1, save, bracket, there you go. For the most part, I use IDs, but you can also use classes. So if you put dot, and let's say you had this one down here, class equals test 1, and we save this, and we previewed it, the other one's red, because it's a class file. So dot, class, hash mark is ID. And then if you just have nothing, it's just generic and changes every single one of those. Now, in CSS, you can do other things that you can't do in a body tag. And I'm going to be going over that in my next tutorial. So make sure to watch it. Check out Debleeble. All these tutorials will be at debleeble.com. And that's about it.